Good morning, everybody. Wow, what a chapter. It is full. Yesterday we had a little bit of fun. I noticed after that Judah, our moderator, kicked Sue's comment out because she said the forbidden words of 6-7 when we were talking about fire bans. And Judah deleted her comment. He was offended by it. Well, he is 12 years old, and I can see that. Anyhow, today we've got a lot of parables to go through. We're going to mostly focus on the parable of the sower, but like I put in my the title, this is like a fire hose of parables. We're going to try to get through as many as possible. Sue and I had talked about maybe splitting the day into two, but we thought, you know what? You already read that chapter, and tomorrow's on to a new one. And so we'll just keep going, but we'll get through as much as we can. So let's begin with the parable of the sower. We see at the very beginning, I am going to zoom in here. Oh, let's go over here. So he goes through and he talks about the parable of the sower. But before we get into that, because he explains it a little later in the chapter, this is also interesting because the purpose of the parables here, Jesus is talking about the parable, and they're saying, why are you saying this? Because they don't understand. And again, we're seeing this over and over again. I'm starting to think, this is not something that I really studied, but I'm starting to think that Matthew was like really pushing this whole thing about every time that Jesus fulfills a prophecy. But Jesus talks about it here again, that this is another prophecy that was fulfilled, in which when Jesus is saying, hearing you will hear and shall not understand, and seeing you will see and not perceive, for the hearts of the people have grown dull. Dull meaning that they are just not receiving anymore. And he goes into this, and we'll go a little bit further, but it's like I heard of a story of a guy. It's almost like, not quite seared, but it's just grown dull to it. It's just familiar with the scriptures or familiar with everything. And so then when we get familiar, this is a danger, especially familiar with the word. Our hearts can grow dull. Familiar means we're used to it. We're not really pushing into know more. And we'll see that also at the end of this chapter. About this part. But anyhow, the parable of the sower is now explained. Now, I've studied this for a long time and I love it. But last night, even after I looked through it, I still got more when I got to bed, and God showed me even more on this parable, and I'm excited to share. So let's look at this, break it down. So therefore, hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom, does not understand it. This is key. Does not understand it. Then the wicked one comes and snatches away that what was sown in his heart. That is he who received the seed by the wayside. And so we have the first one where the seed was by the wayside, and then the birds came and ate it. Well, this is absolutely true. When you hear, let's say you're sitting in a church service and you're listening to the message and you don't understand. It's just like right over your head. This is like by the wayside. There's no understanding, therefore you're not doing anything. Now, something I want to point out about these four soils is that this represents each and every one of us in four different ways. Like these four soils don't necessarily just represent four different people. This is actually my own heart. In four different ways will my heart be in. And it could be different categories. So let's say my heart is really good and really, it takes a lot of stuff, and I receive it and I meditate on marriage, anything about marriage. And so I'm really good with that. But however, I might not understand something when it comes to, let's say, the Sabbath. And so there's no understanding anything I learn about the Sabbath. That seed that was sown is just taken up, eaten, and gone. And so there's no understanding. This is crucial about the understanding. The next one, But he who received but he who received the seed on stony places, all right, so the next one was there was a stony soil. This is he who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. But yet he has no root in himself, but endures only for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, immediately he stumbles. So now this is somebody who, let's say, is sitting in church, and now there's a topic that you're hearing for the first time, and you receive it with joy on Sunday. So Sunday morning, you're like, preach it, and you're all excited and you're all happy. But then you never go, it doesn't grow roots, which means you don't meditate on it. You notice that first we get the seed, and you'll hear me talking a lot about this because this is a topic that I studied and meditated on for a long time. You get the seed, but then what you need to do is you need to meditate on it, mull on it, think about it, and chew it. But this is somebody who just sat in service, was like, oh, awesome message, and then never studied it more, never dug into it more, never meditated more on it. And so you received it well, the seed started to grow, but because it's stony ground and because you didn't meditate on it, it's very shallow. When when something comes, the roots die because you never watered it more. It stayed shallow the entire time. And so then it died and went. And this is something I want to say. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I heard that message already. And they'll be like, Pastor, I heard that message already. Maybe go on to something else. What they're not understanding is the more they preach on it, the more you can meditate on it, the more you can think about it, the more it'll grow. And I'm not saying this in a negative way, but I know you can have your TV on, like, let's say a Christian station all day when you're cleaning and when you're doing this, and you're getting some of it, and that's great. But what's even better is if you take the same message and play it over and over and over and over again. And so this is what happens when we just kind of listen and then we never meditate on it. It's just shallow ground. And so that might be a different topic that you just heard for the first time and you never meditated on it. So there's no meditation. There's no continual chewing of that word. That's what happens with stony ground. And now he who receives seed among the thorns is he who hears the word, and the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. Now, this is another type of person where maybe now you have understanding, and now maybe you even meditated on it. However, let's go to finances. This might be a topic on finances. So you're really good with marriage, but however, when it comes to finances, you have misconceptions. You're thinking, oh, God doesn't want us to be prosperous because you read certain verses that you think a certain way. However, when you really look at the word, it says that he wants us to prosper and be in good health, even as our soul prospers. And there's so many verses that show it. And so there's a huge misconception about God and his prosperity in our lives and just his blessing in our lives. And so then if you don't believe in that, there's roots, there's thorns. And so you also need to be established on what the word says. So 1, understanding. 2 is meditate on it. And as you do that, then you renew your mind, and that's where the thorns get replaced with a lot of seed that choke out the thorns instead of the misconceptions choking out the word that you're going on. And so this is crucial, and this is what God was showing me last night. First, you need to understand it. And if you don't understand it, James says, ask for wisdom, and he will give it to us freely without any reproach. 2, he says, then the next one is meditate on it. And then the third one is, the thorny ground, you want to get the truth and then meditate on that. And then that will replace the thorns in our hearts. And then we see, but he who receives the seed on good ground is he who hears the word. So there we go. We hear the word, we understand it, and indeed we bear fruit. And that's once you meditate on it, the tree grows and then bears fruit. It won't grow and bear fruit if you don't meditate on it, and produces some 100, some 60, and some 30 fold. And so I really wanted to touch this because this is one of my favorite parables. And I thought, man, there's so much into this. And like I said, you got to keep listening to it. Keep going over and over again. And maybe you just need to keep going over this parable over and over again, or play this video again and again if you just need to kind of get that order in. But this is an amazing parable. I absolutely love it. I could go on this parable for a long time, but let's continue. So now we have the parable of the wheat and the tares. So here he says the parable, but we'll go back to it. I think it's in verse 36 or something like that. Yeah, he explains it more in verse 36. So the parable of the mustard seed and the parable of the leaven. So this could be taken, so let's just read it quickly, especially the one about the mustard seed. Another parable he put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which is a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed in the least of all these seeds, but when it grows, it is greater than all the herbs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and nest in its branches. So first of all, we see that this seed is one of the smallest seeds, but it grows to be the greatest. And this is a cool image of the church. When the day of Pentecost came, the disciples were in Jerusalem, and the church started really small, but it grew and it grew and it's still growing. This is a mustard seed, almost one that keeps spreading, but it also grows big and grows strong. But this whole little thing, there's about the birds. So the birds of the air came in and nested in the branches. Some say that this represents people that are, that the evil one sows in between the church and comes in and nests in within the church. Same with this leaven. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in her 3 measures of meal till it was leavened. Oftentimes leaven is a bad side of it. And so the leaven could be represented in such a way that that it's like where the evil one puts it into the bread and the leaven. But however, it could also be in the positive. And so really it's to look at you can look at it in multiple ways between the mustard seed and the leaven. And then the prophecy of the parables. Jesus spoke to multitudes in parables, and without a parable he did not speak to them, that it might be fulfilled. Again, another one, another fulfillment of a parousia, the fulfillment of a prophecy. There we go. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things kept secret from the foundations of the world. And so this was Jesus talking in parables in such a way that people did not understand, because that fulfilled a prophecy. And then there's the parable of the tares explained. So the tares is very similar to the parable of the dragnet, in that we see that, again, the enemy who sowed them, so there's good seed and there's bad seed, even in the kingdom of God. And so we kind of see this perhaps touched in the 2 above, the mustard seed and the leaven. And so it's very similar here. But here the field is the world, the good seed are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one. And the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is at the end of the age, and the reapers of the angel are the angels. And so here we see that at the end, there's going to be the separation of the good seed and the tares. I really want to show you something in verse 38 that Andrew Wommack really touches well on this. I really liked it. It says, this is the key. So let's read 38. The field is the world. The good seeds are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one. So let's go back. This is the key that unlocks this parable. The good seed symbolizes true, born-again believers. The tares represent false believers. Just as tares look like wheat until they produce fruit. And this is absolutely huge. This has to do with the whole, even with sowing in the seeds. When you meditate on something, we don't know the difference between this person or that person, except for by their fruit. And we can see what's their fruit. We can see what people meditate on by what their fruit is. And so really, they look alike until they produce fruit. So false believers can mimic true believers, but the fruit isn't there. Tares are destroyed, and all false believers will be. This is absolutely true of in the kingdom. And so we see this in the parable of the tares, and also the parable that's explained later about the dragnet. And so this is absolutely huge. And Andrew Wommack kind of goes into that with the parable of the leaven, in that these people they're like in the meal, that it leavens all of it. And this can happen to the church, where they're planted into the bread or into the dough, and it leavens the entire thing. But it could also be the opposite way, where we are leaven, and we can impact the whole church in a positive way. And so, and the same thing with the mustard seed. And so I like how Andrew goes and kind of or compares the tares, the dragnet, and the leaven, and the parables of the mustard seed all together. And this is huge. Now, this next one, the parable of the hidden treasure. I really like this one. Let's go into here. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found in the field, and he hid it. And for the joy over it, he goes and sells all that he has to buy that field. This really is huge about when we find the kingdom of heaven, we give our lives to Christ. Now you've found that incredible, beautiful treasure. Well, you might have had plans to do whatever in your life, and this is a good image of somebody who now puts all those plans aside and says, I'm going to do this full on, full heart. God, this is what I'm going after. And so you sell everything you have to go after this. Now, I'm going to give you guys a free one. This was my experience with this parable that I experienced just before we got married. Sue and I, we were engaged, and all of a sudden, Holy Spirit just showed me. He says, Sue is like, he showed me this verse, and he said, Sue is like that treasure. And this is to all you who are married or maybe engaged. Think of your spouse in this way. He said, Sue is like that treasure. He says, when you open up that treasure chest, you know already some of the gifts she's had, because that's what you've gotten to love about her or him. Depends on, But for me, in my case, this is what you love about Sue. So you see this beautiful gold necklace. You see maybe this thing about maybe a crown, a jewels, or something like that. He said, but your job, Phil, in this marriage is to dig further into this treasure chest and find more gifts in her that I've placed. So there might be a tiara down at the bottom of that treasure chest. Phil, it's your job to rummage through and find more gifts in her that I've placed. This is what I want you to do. And so this was something that absolutely challenged me. This was what I received just before we got married. And I thought, wow, I never forgot it. And I try to give this advice to everybody who gets married, that to treat people like this treasure, that when you have found it, go in it, because you've found this person. Now you're kind of abandoned all, and you go just for that treasure, but look further into it, because there's more gifts and more things. And so this was something I wanted to really touch on. And then there's the last part, and this has to do about the hearts growing dull that we read at the beginning, where Jesus was rejected at Nazareth because they were familiar with him. They knew him. They knew his brothers. They knew his sisters. But when they heard all these parables, they thought, man, what a man of wisdom. But he's just like his brothers and his sisters. And this was absolutely huge. Because of the familiarity, because they were familiar with everything, now they did not know. Now he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. And their unbelief was because they were familiar with it and they just couldn't receive it. And so here, I want to just read what he wrote in the last verse. Compare this with the same instance recorded in Mark 6:5, which says, he could there do no mighty works. It's not that Jesus didn't want to do any mighty works. He couldn't do them because of their unbelief, and this became because of their familiarity. The unbelief of others stopped Jesus from doing all that he wanted to do. If this was true with Jesus, then we certainly can't just ignore the unbelief of others. It'll affect us also. And so, of course, we want to bless people. We want to pray for people. But oftentimes an unbelief comes from familiarity. And there's actually a really good book on this. It's called The Spirit of Familiarity. And it could absolutely, if you're just familiar with your pastor and you don't receive his word as well, or if you're familiar with the Bible, you're not getting those gems in you. So I know this was a lot and I kind of shot through them, but hopefully we can go back, keep studying, keep meditating on them. They were absolutely, like I said, a fire hose of parables, but I hope that was a blessing to you. And all right, guys, have a great day. I love this chapter. I really love that parable of the sower and those four soils. And this is a good thing that we need to do. Just look at ourselves, see which categories you're in, which ones you believe, maybe which ones you have thorns in, maybe which ones you only have small roots in and you need to meditate more on. Maybe you're having struggles with a certain, like a healing or a miracle, a healing to take place. Well, maybe you need to meditate more on healing and what Jesus did for us on the cross. And so that those roots get bigger and then we see the fruit thereof as the tree grows. And so, all right, guys, be a light out there. Let your light so shine. Always make a difference, guys. Go and value people as much as you can. All right, guys, have a great day and stay filled up.